Do you know what it feels like to be really nervous? Like really nervous. Like just before a first date, or a job interview, or standing on a stage in front of an audience like I'm doing right now. It's a scary feeling, isn't it? Makes you feel vulnerable. Makes you feel naked. And naked is a good keyword because I know quite a lot about being naked. I used to work as an international showgirl, literally dancing my way around the world. And for those of you who aren't quite sure what a showgirl does, it involves taking off all your clothes in an artistic setup, with some elements of pole dancing and burlesque dancing, like you'd find in the infamous Moulin Rouge in Paris. So, yeah, naked is something I know a lot about. And I'm going to get naked for you today. Literally. Because naked, for me, doesn't just imply the physical part, but it also means the emotional part. To be really authentic, honest, true to yourself, stripped away by all layers of pretense. To go for what really is you, what makes you happy and content. But before I want to go into this, I want to start with a short story. Once upon a time, there were two people, a man and a woman, and they did not know each other. The only thing they had in common were they were both born in Poland in the late 40s, beginning of 50s, during the communist times. And they both shared the same kind of desire, the same kind of yearning for freedom, for traveling. But let me start with the man. The man grew up in a small rural town in Poland, and he had a very adventurous streak and a complete yearning for traveling the world. And he was against the communist society. You know, as you all know about communism, it's all about the collective mind. It's not about your inner voice or whatever you want or your individual opinion. It's about what everyone else wants. So him and his friends, they would gather at the local train station and they'd watch those big cargo trains, those big transportational trains. You know those big chunky ones, those romantic looking ones? Those ones. And those were loaded in Poland and then sent over to Western Germany. And those romantic, chunky old trains had a distinct feature. You could unscrew the roof on top, and between the roof and the actual beginning of the train was a small air compartment, just big enough for a grown man to lay into. So as they gathered one of their nights with their friends and looking at these trains moving from Western Germany to freedom, from Poland to Western Germany into freedom, one of the friends brought a screwdriver. They all looked at each other and they started to unscrew each part of the roofs, and they all laid themselves into those compartments. And the man I'm talking about later, with his arms crossed over his chest, and then waited until this train started moving. He fell asleep soon enough, as soon as the train started moving with a slow and steady rhythm. And at some point, the train stopped. And he woke up with a jerk. How much time would have passed? Minutes, hours? He didn't know. Did he make it from Poland to Western Germany? Or was he perhaps stuck in Eastern Germany, even worse than being stuck somewhere else in Poland? So he just lay there with his heart pounding, like my heart is pounding right now while I'm telling this. And at some point, he just decided to go for it. So he popped up the lid, opened up the roof, popped up the lid, put his head out, looked outside, and finally he saw a big sign saying Hamburg, West Germany. Yes! So he's made it into freedom, he made it to West Germany. So the woman of the story had the same similar desire, the same similar yearning for freedom, but she didn't quite have the adventurous streak the man had. So she did it the academic way. She studied German really, really hard, until she finally got a job in a German-Polish company and eventually was sent over to Western Germany, to Hamburg, for cultural exchange. So she got to Hamburg and she was on her way to work, driving her car. It was really early in the morning, and at some point the car stopped because the engine broke down. So she got out of the car and thought, geez, what am I going to do? Like, I'm in a foreign country, it's like 6 a.m. in the morning, and there's nobody in the street apart from a lonely figure of a man walking towards her in the distance. And while she was looking at that man, the man came forward, and it turns out it's the same man from the train. So you can imagine what happened. It's like two Polish people with the same yearning for freedom in Western Germany. So they've just met, so what can happen? Well, he fixed her car, They went for coffee, and they fell in love, and then they had me. This is the story of my parents. So one could argue that crossing frontiers is part of my genetical makeup. And I'm very lucky because my parents had always raised me this way. They'd always raised me to encourage me to go my own way, to be authentic, to be honest, to be true to myself, to be naked. Well, to be fair, I don't quite think they envisioned their daughter to dance around the world naked. Well, technically, I wasn't entirely naked, I was still wearing shoes. And it's and it's not like they'd said, Patricia, whatever, just go for whatever you want to do, just make sure being a showgirl is not on that list. So, I mean, quite obviously, you can see the point here, yeah, it's their fault. No, but jokes aside, being a showgirl has been an incredible experience for me because it helped to cross my own frontiers, geographically, by traveling the world, socially, by entering and getting to know a stigmatized environment, and personally also by getting comfortable in my own naked skin. Not just physically, but also emotionally, in every aspect possible. But let me tell you how I got into the showgirl world in the first place. Music and dancing have always been a passion of mine. Like music, when I listen to music, the rhythm, whatever it is, it goes straight into my bones, straight into my soul. It's something that ignites me. I get goosebumps in it. It's like, I'm sure everybody has something that they lose track of time when they do it. For me, it's music and dancing. It's always been like this. So it wasn't really a big deal when I ended my first strip show in London during my time at university during a drunken night out with some girlfriends. And I ended up in this, we looked at this strip show, and all I could see was these amazing women on stage, their grace, the expression of femininity, sensuality, the power these women exuded, the confidence they had. Maybe other women can relate to that. It's like being in a shop, in a changing room in front of a mirror can be very daring already. What would it feel like on a fully lit stage? Don't ask me why I wanted to get into this. I simply got drawn to it, and I ended up auditioning for this at this club, and which should have just been a daring contest, like a one-off, something, a funny anecdote I could tell my grandkids in 50 years' time to say, like Christmas dinners, you know what? Granny used to wear a bikini once, right? So, but maybe I was a bit naive and idealistic to think I could just enter the adult entertainment world without no damage to myself at all. It all went well for many years. I traveled the world. I met a lot of amazing women, amazing people. I learned about confidence, about power, about all these things. And I loved dancing, and I loved making money with it, of course. Until that one particular night in Australia. I had just done a fantastic show. I was wearing an awesome costume, a beautiful makeup on. I looked fantastic. I felt beautiful. I was at the peak of my physical fitness. I had a lot of applause. It was an amazing night. And I just got off stage. You know, when you just feel really in control of your life, and then suddenly that bang, the crash is gonna come. So that's how it felt that day. I walked off stage, and then some random guy just came up to me and said, "Why are you doing this? Like, a beautiful young woman like yourself, don't you have other options? Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" Shame, strong word. It hit me like a slap in the face. It hit me like as if I've been in a boxing fight. It really got to me. You know, it's not like nobody's ever made this kind of comment before, but this time it really hit me hard. You know, when somebody uncovers you, just rips off your mask, like really sees through you? Like when your mom says to you, "I know you've been to the cookie jar, I know you have." And you're like, "Mm-mm," although your face is like covered in chocolate, like entirely. Yeah, that kind of. Just accept that the taste on my lips that day wasn't sweet from chocolate, but salty from all the tears that came down that day. And there were quite a lot of them. I decided to take off, to go home from work early, and I locked myself. I went into the bathroom, locked myself into the bathroom, and had a really long, hot shower. Got out of the shower and stood in front of the mirror naked, and really looked at myself like, am I really being naked? Physically, yeah. But emotionally? Am I being really honest, authentic, true to myself, stripped away by all layers of pretense? Really? Then why does it feel so bruised up, so vulnerable? Why does it feel that something's not quite right? So I took some more weeks off work because I really needed to do some soul searching. And the remedy came in form of a friend of mine who kept listening to my story very patiently. And I kept telling him, and at some point he said, okay, look, Patricia, I've got 3 questions for you. Question number 1. What are your values in life? Question number 2. And can you define each area in your life, relationship, work, health, lifestyle, whatever, can you name a value for each of these areas? And question number 3, are you really living by these values? And I was like kind of, I don't know, I was stunned and I don't know, annoyed at the same time because I felt like values, whatever, everyone's got values, right? I mean, be kind, don't overeat, help the elderly, don't kill anybody, unless it's obviously necessary, right? So, I mean, so it's like values, I mean, what is he talking about? So, but I was very lucky because he kept nagging me and left me with this homework to fill out. And so I locked myself into my house for like a whole weekend and with a bottle of wine or 2 or 3 actually that night. And and I just kept really asking myself, what is that? What is it? And when you try to listen to the voice of your heart that sits here, and you try to really listen, but there's another one, that really big one, that critical one, the one that's full of judgment, of doubt, of fear, of expectations, conditioned by society. You can't do this, you can't want this, you have to that one. And that small one here is really, really sometimes difficult to hear. So I spent the whole weekend, those 2 were just fighting for a long time. It was like a boxing match. And at some point, that critical one just became smaller and smaller, and the voice of my heart became louder and louder. And then I really listened. And it all fell into place. I came out of that house, I realized that what I absolutely love about the showgirl world to this day is the expression of femininity, the sensuality, the artistic expression, the dancing, the freedom of choice, the traveling, the sisterhood among the girls, the loyalty. But I also realized what I absolutely hated about this world and what I do until today. The sexual objectification, the constant negative connotations. So you're a dancer, you must also be a prostitute, right? Constantly having to play dumb in order to be credible. It's not like us dancers were wearing some kind of tag that said like multilinguist, academic, not a victim. It's like also a cliche, right? So I've realized that yes, a lot of my values were great at the beginning when I started off dancing. I wanted to be free in artistic expression and all that. But then I realized that this kind of didn't suffice anymore. I had to have something else. What was missing was the respect. I felt I didn't want to be respected by my physical appearance anymore, which was a goal maybe in my earlier years, but I wanted to be respected by my intelligence. So that was a key moment for me, and respected as a woman as well. And so that was a key moment for me in my life where I felt I had to change something. And I felt that the showgirl world has shown me enough. It takes courage to go on the stage and take your clothes off in front of strangers. But it takes even more courage to look inside yourself and become naked. So for me, being naked means to be really authentic, really honest, really true to yourself, stripped away by all layers of pretense. And the lesson I learned from this is that there are core values and there are seasonal values. And your core values pretty much never change, or maybe a little bit when you get older, but there are some core values, like for me it's artistic expression or freedom of choice or integrity, respect. These are things that are really important to me. But there's also seasonal values. Just before I started dancing, I could have never ever imagined myself working as a showgirl. Never imagined myself working in an office, but so it made sense to be on a stage. But now that I've changed careers and I work as a full-time author now, I quite like a nice desk and a hot cup of tea in front of me. And I'm glad I can kick off those stilettos and can wear barefoot. So the lesson of this whole story for me was just to really, how do we get naked in the end, is by step 1, really define your values, really sit down, make a list of as many values you think are important to you, and then really narrow them down to the 5 maybe most important ones. And then step 2, really look at each area of your life, whether it's work or relationships or your calling or your lifestyle, whatever, and see what kind of values are needed for each area of that life, what makes you happy and proud. And then step 3, really be honest and naked with yourself and say, hey, am I really living these values? And what do I need to redefine them? And what do I need to maybe change in my life to make me happy and content? Does that sound easy? Well, for me, this has been one of the most simplest and hardest exercises ever in my life, to really confront myself naked. And to stand here in front of you telling you this actually feels more naked than it ever felt just wearing shoes on a fully lit stage. So if it's one thing I learned from the showgirl world, it's to have courage. Courage to go your own way, courage to really look deep inside, courage to fight that critical voice of doubt and fear and judgment, to really get that voice of your heart become louder and louder, and then to just really listen. Listen carefully. Scary? Yeah. Vulnerable? For sure. But you know what? It's absolutely and utterly worth it, because we only have this one life and we all share the same kind of yearning to be happy. And we really get there when we experience the power of nakedness, when we're really honest, really authentic, and really true to ourselves. Thank you very much.